There are a lot of different game modes across many different games that are incredibly difficult. There are challenging game modes like Sniper Elite's Authentic Mode, Gears of War's Inconceivable Mode, and Metro's Ranger Hardcore Mode, though while all of these modes are hard, none of them are practically impossible. Even Skyrim's own most difficult mode, Legendary Survival, can be quite trivial with the right playstyle and some patience, at least in comparison to what I attempted to tackle for this video. What if you attempted a challenge like no other? One so hard, so much harder than all the others that, for all intents and purposes, it was, in fact, impossible. That's what I'm trying to find out for today's video. Can you beat Skyrim on Impossible Mode? The rules for this run, taken from XCOM's game mode of the same name, are as follows. I must play the game in a post-apocalyptic setting where Alduin has already ended the world by the start of the game. For what few vendors and sellers I can find, all prices are now increased by 1.5 times. All the enemies in the game have had their AIs overhauled to be better and more strategic. The game must be beaten on legendary difficulty for the strongest possible enemies. The tutorial section at Helgen will be completely skipped. I am not allowed to recruit any allies to help me for this run, and I must beat the entire main story without dying, or else I'll have 5 other mods to the game, a good half of which either make the existing enemies exorbitantly harder, or add new, more powerful and terrifying monsters to the game. Stepping up to the plate to take on the literal end of the world, the only man perfect for the job, the only one with the temperament and experience with eldritch world-ending abominations to take on this insurmountable task. For this video, I'll be playing as Nuts from Berk. With that said, let's see if I can actually beat this impossible challenge, or if I'll have to pass the torch on to you guys to see if any of you can succeed where I fail. I start by making myself into the man himself, gaining an awesome Berserker Rage once a day power that halves damage taken and doubles damage dealt for the duration, very on brand, and I speak to Drorir, a Khajiit that apparently saved my life when Alduin ambushed me at the Whiterun Watchtower due to having seen future me learning Dragonrend from the past with the Elder Scroll, and trying to stop me before I can learn it and use it to defeat him. Apparently I was knocked out, so Farengar and Irilith asked Drorir to take me to the Imperial City, but up in the mountains at the border was as close as he could get due to there being too many dragons or monstrosities that had either come up from the dark below to roam the lands, or had been created as a result of the corruption of the world. My first step to defeating Alduin was to head down to nearby Falkreath and investigate what was going on there. And after avoiding some terrifying monsters, I make it there. I'll need to be stuck between some rocks and get incinerated by a nearby dragon. After descending to Falkreath once more, I was immediately killed by the first couple Archer Draugr. Deciding that basic iron armor wasn't gonna cut it, I got myself Guts' Golden Age band of the Hawk Mercenary armor, his knife, and his Hawk's Soldier Greatsword, Black Swordsman armor, and Dragonslayer sword for later in the run. Kitted out with my visor-down Golden Age armor and my knife in hand, I struck out once more, and died in the same place after killing like 2 Draugr. After taking a moment to admire Dragonslayer and the cool animation for Guts' stance along with it, I ran down and fought my way through the foggy, corpse-infested village, but I died almost immediately each time. A 5th death while trying to one-man army them, a 6th after being burned alive by that dragon somewhere around here again, and no progress made, so I had to make the executive decision at the very start of the run to fail the challenge. My first ever challenge so difficult, it wasn't practically possible even from the start. The first objective of the main quest, and even Guts wasn't strong enough to make any progress after 2.5 hours. I went to save and quit at the end of that session, only to realize that I didn't need to save because I hadn't made any progress. So, I revised the rules. The game will now be played on Novice, the easiest difficulty, and I can reload from saves after dying. Let's see if Impossible Mode is actually any easier with those rule changes. Now emboldened by the fact that it's unlikely that I'll be one-shot by everything, I decided to try to kill this Minotaur Lord with my knife, which I successfully do like fighting a Dark Souls boss. Just circle to the right. This time, I ran straight into Falkreath from the mountain, activated Berserker Rage, and tore through the Draugr in my way like butter. That said, the dragon hanging around was certainly still a tough fight. I was chopping him down pretty well, and used a level up as a full heal, but the Draugr ads surrounded me before I could finish it off, and killed me. Funny, doesn't look like an eclipse. This time, I fought my way through to the last bastion of humanity here in Falkreath, the residence of the newly appointed Jarl. The dragon sent its forces, including a dragon priest, into the building where they slaughtered us all. The next time, the Draugrs overwhelmed me and the dragon finished me off, but with roaring thunder in the dark skies above and rain pouring down below. After fighting my way into the town once more, I activated Berserker Rage and used potions to strengthen myself and keep myself alive, allowing me to finally slay the dragon and finish off his minions. I had to retreat briefly due to being attacked by what I later figured out was an invisible skeleton, but after recovering, I re-entered the town, took out more Draugr, and defeated the leader of Alduin's forces in Falkreath, Sidgeir, made into a dragon priest. One down? Like, the whole quest to go. Next I had to head to Whiterun, retracing my footsteps from before Alduin's return, and after fighting off some wolves and skeevers, I made it to the now decimated town of Riverwood, where I received the Berserker armor and fought my way through some Draugr down to Whiterun. Though the skies had cleared, a darkness still hung overhead, as Whiterun was much worse than Falkreath, having been destroyed with no signs of any survivors and completely overrun by even stronger Draugr. Even just making it to the city was a bitch. I mean, there are like 20 guys over there. I tried to pick them apart one at a time, but then a friggin' dragon swoops down and joins the fray. It wasn't long after that I died, and I would die a great many times, even taking a ton of them with me in the process, but never beating them all, before eventually I tried to gain levels elsewhere before continuing on. I headed back to Falkreath to see if I could get any quests from anyone there, when this giant frostbite spider blitzed towards me at 1,000 miles per hour to deliver me some mail, in doing so, causing me to shit out all of my organs. Better yet, just when I thought I was safe, I opened the letter he gave me, which was poisoned and knocked me out. Waking up in a prison and tasked with escaping for the amusement of some Daedric princes, I thought this might be exactly what I was looking for. Until I stepped 5 feet in either of the available directions, where I got mauled to death by werewolves. I never came back to this quest, but I would like to in a future video. After reloading a save, I tried to buy some stuff from Laud, the Falkreath blacksmith, but as to be expected, everything was much too expensive. Jarl Sidgeir, no relation to the Sidgeir that became a dragon priest, totally different guy, wanted me to get him Riften beer as his quest, so instead of wasting my time with a fetch quest for this snobby asshole, I decided to just bite the bullet and go back to Whiterun. As soon as I arrived, I was set upon by Draugr and vampires, and after narrowly avoiding death by jumping into the river and swimming down to the bridge, I took shelter under the bridge and spent the next half hour coming out, killing some Draugr, and running back under where their pathing couldn't get to me. After holding out there for a while and not making any significant progress, I retreated back to the remnants of the Sleeping Giant Inn in Riverwood to fight the Draugr as they came through the door while being protected from the dragon. After attempting several last stands here, but inevitably getting overrun each time, I fought them off all the way back to the guard tower right before Bleak Falls Barrow, and fought them in that tower for about an hour. This spot was much better, as I was still protected by the tower roof, and they could still only come in one at a time, but the bridge in the doorway made it more difficult for them to pour in, and the terrain messed with their pathing so that I only had to deal with them in groups of about 20 at a time. I started picking away at the dragon between waves with the staff I got from the Sidgeir Dragon Priest and the bow and arrows of fallen Draugr, and after about 3 waves of Draugr and damaging the dragon's wings so that he couldn't fly anymore, I had defeated the dragon guarding Whiterun, as well as all the Draugr at his command. Covered in the blood of my enemies, I stormed Whiterun, killed Lovanhir, Bane of Whiterun, using my knife and a level-up heal, finished off the remnants of the Draugr army in the city with my knife, and, after being killed like a dozen times by the Dragon Priest here because he had an ice staff that slowed me down to the point that I could never reach him, I defeated Draugr Jarl Balgruuf and his attendant Dragon Priest with Berserker Rage, and cheesing the Dragon Priest with a bow and arrow from around a corner. Next, I'm off to High Hrothgar to find out what's become of the Greybeards that had summoned me moments before the World Eater, well, ate the world. After picking a fight with some ogres and goblins, then coming to immediately regret that decision, I set out for Ivarstead to ascend the actually like a couple hundred steps to the Throne of the World, notably shanking this necromancer, killing this troll and finding a note in a cool book on the corpses of the guards he killed, and killing another Minotaur Lord along the way. In Ivarstead, I had to take down another army of Draugr and a blood dragon, but this was one of the easier sieges admittedly. After killing off most of the Draugr from inside this burnt down shack, and I say most because this guy snuck up behind me and jump scared me, I just shot the blood dragon through a hole in the wall until it died. Climbing to High Hrothgar was probably one of the easiest parts of the run. The only thing out of the ordinary or unexpected was a werewolf savage spawning right next to me and jump scaring me. something that happens because of one of the mods I have downloaded that randomly spawns hostile creatures near you at night. I checked the corpses of the Greybeards and found a letter basically saying that Alduin has returned, all the holds have fallen, and I'm the only one that can stop him, so now I've gotta go to Riften, Markarth, Solitude, and Winterhold and do what I did in Falkreath and Whiterun. Take out an army of Draugr, defeat a dragon, and then fight a boss, a Draugr or Dragon Priest of a former NPC. I learned the shouts they left behind, Whirlwind Sprint and Unrelenting Force, equipped my Hawk's Soldier Greatsword to face this challenge properly, put my visor up so that my enemies can see my face and know what little chance they stand, and fast traveled to Ivarstead to go to Riften. I'm going to say this very slowly and articulately so that everyone hears me properly and doesn't misunderstand. Not long after leaving Ivarstead, I am set upon by a horde of crows, Neckers, some evil little demon goblin things, and a Leshen, a giant evil tree Wendigo creature. They were certainly less intimidating than they appeared once I had a chance to get away from them and reassess, and after putting some distance between me and the Neckers, I took some of them and most of the crows out, but the Leshen kept attacking me with evil roots at a distance, so I closed the distance and finished it off. It definitely didn't help them that they were in turn attacked by a horde of goblins, and after cutting down all the goblins myself, I finished off the Necker chief, but not before he led me into an ambush of Draugr. I took them out with help from a manic mage and his pet Beholder, though it seems that he didn't want to be friends, so I carved my way through the rift, ran past a horde of Draugr, and made it to Riften, where I fought the entire occupying Draugr army and a dragon from the windmill on Snowshod Farm. Small enclosed space, bottleneck choke point doorway, only one way in and only one way out. I tried to kill Sully Rondin, Bane of Riften, as quickly as possible to get him out of the way, and after developing the strategy of attacking him and then whirlwind sprinting away, dying a couple times, and thinning the Draugr horde, I did finally take him out and then take out the rest of the Draugr there over the course of about 25 minutes after a horde of goblins killed Lila for me. Narrowly escaping the remaining Draugr and the goblins, I then fast traveled to the stables by Whiterun and make my way over to Markarth. The trip was fairly uneventful, just a trip through a spooky forest, killing some wolves, I killed a giant mud crab, some skeevers, and before long I was in the Reach. I followed the lantern-lit road through the fog until I was spotted by a giant, flying female cockatrice, at which point I fled to Salvus Farm and attempted my prior fighting out of a farm windmill strategy, but when I say this was the longest, most challenging battle of the run, you gotta know that it wasn't that simple. After it landed, I killed it fairly quickly, but I barely survived her poison, and right after barely surviving, before even getting a chance to recover, I was then attacked by an elemental dragon. Then my game crashed, no big deal since I saved, but a sign of what's to come in that the crash was probably caused by the number of assets my Xbox was trying to process in Markarth. I tried to bow and arrow the dragon, but the Draugr army was already on me. I tried to avoid the dragon and fight the Draugr, and it one-shot me through the wall. I tried to run, I fried. The nearby bridge had wonky collisions, so that strat isn't viable, and a building in a nearby mine is completely see-through, so I panic and make a run for it only to be killed. Several deaths later, I run into the house across from the windmill out of desperation and find that it's also see-through, but I also realize that the collision is still there, and the house's being buggy messes with the Draugr's pathing, so they have a hard time getting in. After seeing just a small portion of the literal army I have to face, I accidentally phase through the back wall and get slaughtered, but when I get back in there, while I'm mostly safe, I have no way of getting close enough to attack them without getting attacked back, and I definitely can't run, so what do? I even tried a Berserker Rage Last Stand, but I literally only killed 3 of them, and when I retreated into the house, they started phasing through the walls. I tried getting them with my bow, but they all just kept spamming Unrelenting Force and staggering me. Back against a wall, literally, I couldn't figure out what to do. But at the time of recording, I was watching a 3-hour VOD of Jabo playing through Oblivion with a gun mod and was inspired. What could I use to defeat this army if not a massive greatsword? Why, a gun of course! So I downloaded the Dwemer Firebolt rifle to at least keep some semblance of lore friendliness, and made it and 300 of each ammo type for myself, at which point, I began to shoot at them with explosive fire bullets from the safety of the house. Every now and then they would phase in, typically in groups of too many to handle at once, and sometimes they would recover my ammo and fire it back at me with their bows, but after a whopping hour and a half, a dozen retries, all 300 of my fire bullets, and damn near 50 of my ice bullets, I defeated the Markarth Draugr army. Also, a side effect of downloading the gun mod was that it appears to have caused Realistic Water 2 to glitch, causing my water to look like oil, but that's quite appropriate as I can't think of anything more American than guns and oil except maybe fast food, so they go well together. I then defeat the Elemental Dragon, and while I was trying to fight my way into Markarth to take out the boss, they, whoever they were, somehow died on their own and I never fought them. Oh well, on to the next. Donning the armor of the Black Swordsman with the legendary Dragon Slayer in hand, I headed to Solitude for the penultimate stronghold. Another one that would end up taking over an hour to overcome. Oh yeah, also I defeated Jultor, the Bane of Markarth. Don't know what he was doing here, but yeah, just kinda got slayed. On the way to Solitude, I fought some Draugr, a vampire, a Minotaur lord and his forsworn allies. I saw a floating mammoth skull in Karthwasten, which was pretty cool. I fought and killed another cockatrice, and I found a cool little secret ritual area thing. Lots of fun and cool stuff. What preceded at Solitude was neither cool, nor was it fun. After fighting my way through a forest by lamplight and trekking through a poisoned-riddled swamp in the dark, I reached the shores of the Solitude Sawmill, where, using Berserker Rage, the Dragon Slayer, and my gun, I fought a horde of Draugr for another hour and a half. This fight took so long because the Draugr, there having to have been around 50 of them, kept using the disarm shout on me. So I would either lose Dragon Slayer or my rifle and either have to pick it up or reload a save, because I wasn't going to remake either weapon every time they made me drop it. I tried fighting them in the windmill again, seems to have had decent results in the past, but like the times before, I quickly got overwhelmed and had to re-strategize. I had to use the gun for most of the battle simply due to the DPS of the Dragon Slayer not being enough to kill enough Draugr before I got swarmed. The Dragon Slayer packs a good punch, but the gun hits twice as hard and can be rapid fire. The Dragon Slayer is only half as strong, and you swing it around less like a sword and more like a massive hunk of metal. I kept training the Draugr between the farm and the sawmill to the point that this challenge was starting to feel more like a high-round game of COD Zombies than a Berserk-theme XCOM-inspired Skyrim challenge run. There were a couple of places, like the actual saw at the sawmill and some rocks nearby, where they couldn't get to, but something always ended up going wrong. Also, it should be mentioned that the level of Draugr I was up against at this point certainly didn't make things easier, most being Draugr Wights, Overlords, and Death Overlords. But after I finally defeated the forward army, I defeated the couple guarding the gate into Solitude, and I instantly get clowned on by Bradkrill, Bane of Solitude and my asshole. Next time in, neither he nor any enemies initially spawned, but when confronting Elsif, the Draugr boss here, all hell broke loose. I got disarmed and overwhelmed pretty quickly, and unfortunately, my next attempt wouldn't even be that lucky as Brad was back. Furthermore, Durak takes this perfectly reasonable opportunity to attempt to solicit me for the Dawn Guard, which I had to refuse because I was kind of busy at the moment, and on principle since they're concerned with vampires ending the world in the future when the world has already ended because of the thing I'm trying to fight right now. I guess Brad took that opportunity to phone a friend, because an Elder Dragon shows up as well and I was cooked. Literally. Next go, I literally check for Durak, try to go into Solitude, and he Omaewas right behind me. Finally, in my next attempt, I'm able to bait both dragons to attack while I'm in the safety of the nearby Solitude watchtowers and shoot them right out of the sky. Afterwards, Elsif was easy enough, and then I fast traveled to Valtheim Towers and head east to the final hold under Alduin's domain, Winterhold. The journey was tough. I had to fight a dragon priest, avoid some ogres, I got attacked by the Silverhand for some reason even though I'm not a werewolf. I was also attacked by potential Silverhand-aligned tamed boars, a massive cockatrice matriarch, and some abomination called a Bolgan Beastmaster that I'd say is probably the one in charge of the boars, just a hunch. And that was all before even getting to Winterhold. Now, for Winterhold itself. My experience here was miserable. And after failing the challenge at the very beginning of the video and setting the game to the easiest difficulty, this was 100% the part of the run that broke me, that stomped out any remaining semblance of integrity for the challenge. When I tell you, full stop that there had to have been over 100 Draugr in all in the forward assault team, with at least half of them being able to either disarm me or ragdoll me with unrelenting force, that might be an honest-to-God understatement. I could go into vivid detail of my trial and error, the things I tried to do to kill them, then to survive, and then to even just be able to stand up and hold my weapon, but instead, I'll just show you this in hopes that it gets my point across. So after about 2 hours plus of making negative progress here, I gave myself all shouts, used Become Ethereal so that I couldn't be ragdolled, gave myself 5 times speed, ran into Winterhold, brained Ulfric, and left. Jesus, Father God in heaven. Alright, kiddos! Last stop for this challenge? The Dragonborn versus Alduin and all of his remaining cronies at the place where the end began, the Whiterun Watchtower. For my final battle, I donned my most powerful armor, the Berserker armor, and headed to the Watchtower with Dragonslayer to slay me a dragon. As I approached the tower, the sky began to glow, a thick fog rolls in, and the lands are roamed by the lost souls of Alduin's victims. Those great and terrible serpents soar overhead. Well, one just kinda T-poses in place in the sky, but I rush to the Watchtower and the final fight begins. First, I'm attacked by Altadar, Bane of Windhelm. I immediately switch to my Firebolt rifle, and I eventually shoot him down and finish him off. Yeah, despite being called Dragon Slayer, it really isn't that good of an option for actually slaying dragons. Next to fall was a blood dragon that made the mistake of landing near the doorway of the tower and got peeked on, but that's when some of the Draugr for this fight started to find their way to me, so I knew I had to finish this fight fast before I got overwhelmed. Next, I downed and finished off 2 normal dragons, I killed an ancient dragon through a bow slit in the tower, and finally the last of Alduin's dragon cronies landed to the left of the tower, but I couldn't kill him because the Draugr horde had finally arrived. Luckily for me though, a werewolf skinwalker spawned right there because it was nighttime and that actually killed him. After getting away from the Draugr, far enough for a 1v1 against Alduin, I used Dragon Rend to force him to the ground, and, not wanting to risk losing this very tenuous opportunity, just decided to solve this problem like any American would. I gunned Alduin down. He gave it a good fight, but I was able to defeat him before the Draugr horde caught up, just barely though, and did not beat Skyrim on Impossible mode. Well, what can I say? It was true to its name. Definitely a book you can indeed judge by its cover. I'll admit though, going into this challenge, I was expecting the higher prices to be more of an issue and the main difficulty of the run being the legendary enemies and no saving, but while the higher prices did stop me from stocking up on goods once or twice, the apocalypse made it so that there were rarely vendors to purchase from. As for the difficulty in trying to Iron Man, while those parts of the challenge were certainly not negligible, with my opting to not do those challenges being the only reason I made any progress at all, the Apocalypse alone certainly made the game more than challenging enough to be difficult. Add to that, no tutorial items to help me get started, no companions allowed, and smarter enemy AI in conjunction with the, 60 mods I downloaded for new or stronger enemies, and you've got yourself a challenge every bit as impossible as if I had done legendary no saves. Still though, fighting against insurmountable odds with nothing but my armor, my massive sword, and my rage definitely gave me the 100% grade A guts experience. Oh, and guns. Guns too. Well, that's it for this video. If you like this challenge run and want to see more Elder Scrolls challenges in the future, be sure to like the video. I'd like to do Morrowind and Oblivion challenges as well, so I think from here on out, whenever I decide to do an Elder Scrolls challenge, I'll put up a poll beforehand so you guys can vote on which run you'd like to see. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this or anything else on the channel. Next video is a Cyberpunk run, so be sure to keep an eye out since I'll be putting up a poll soon for you guys to choose what run I'll be doing. Alright, I've been Red Fox, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.